Hello and welcome to the Collective Narrative Winter 2020 End of Quarter Update. I'm David and I'm going to be giving this presentation with Nina to explain what we were working on this quarter. So as we all know, in Collective Narrative, we're working with stories that are opportunistic and crowdsourced from a variety of people. And until now, Collective Narrative always dealt with fictional stories. And this quarter, we were really interested in pushing the boundaries of Collective Narrative and trying to figure out how we could possibly tell nonfiction stories that are important to a variety of audiences through this Collective Narrative platform. And so the idea we had was to share experiences of current Northwestern students with prospective students that are visiting campus. So as you might know, there's every year tons of prospective students come to Northwestern and they want to get an authentic experience of what it might be like to come to school at Northwestern. And so there's several problems here that we think we could address through our design, which we'll get into in this video. As we know, it's not an easy task. Showing our students around campus can be very time consuming, and there's tour guides to do that, but that's a very time consuming task and it burdens the tour guides and there's a lot of administrative work that needs to be done there, and it requires a lot of careful route planning to make sure that they're hitting important spots that are relevant to all kinds of prospective students. So to make these tours interesting, a guide needs to have very extensive knowledge about both obvious and more hidden places on campus that might be interesting and relevant. And so we know of a lot of existing technologies that prospective students might be using when they come to visit a campus. For example, Snapchat has group stories and things like that. And then there's Yelp that has recommendations of places to go. And we explored a lot of these technologies in the early stages of our research and need finding. And we really weren't able to find something that solved every problem, something that presented stories as organized, cohesive, and a nice narrative. But that also kind of had these more interesting hidden gem locations that only an authentic student at Northwestern can really provide. And above all, none of these platforms are particularly engaging or interesting or really feel like you're participating in a story at all. And so our goal is to create a low effort way for local participants, meaning current Northwestern students, to create unique, easy to follow narrative experiences for visitors to get a sense of what a day in the life of a Northwestern student is really like. And so over the course of this quarter, we did a lot of things. We worked on need finding from the different users, because obviously we're adding a user class to Collective Narrative that didn't exist in this audience or prospective student user class. We also did brainstorming and ideation to come up with ideas. This is the bulk of our quarter, really trying to get the breadth and scope of the problem space that we're dealing with and try to find some early examples of solutions. We were working with classic user-centered design principles using design arguments to articulate our ideas. And we finished out the quarter working on a prototype and user study, which we will talk about later. So for the need finding phase of this project, there was two main user groups that we focused on. There's the contributing participants who are current Northwestern students who are really proud of their campus and want to share it with prospective students and have this kind of interaction where there's an exchange of knowledge and kind of a kind of sense of camaraderie between current students and prospective students. And then there's the audience themselves, who are these prospective students and possibly their parents that are visiting campus and want to get this unique and authentic experience. And so there's a few approaches that we took towards need finding. We had our status update really early in the quarter, which we used to try to get some general knowledge about Collective Narrative and how this project operated and some different possibilities for the directions we could take it. And then from there, we were using pair research and SIG meetings on a weekly basis to iterate on some ideas and continue to brainstorm and bounce ideas off of other people. This was aided by talking to our previous project lead who worked on Collective Narrative for many quarters, continuing to research other related work and identifying some current problems that existed with the technologies that we'll be likely working with, Cerebro and the CN language, that we could possibly build upon to add and enhance the Collective Narrative experience for nonfiction storytelling. So we had a couple major takeaways from need finding. We realized that on the student end, for these contributors, they really were passionate about their communities. They're really proud about their communities, and they do want to share some of that information with prospective students. They want to build this sense of camaraderie between people that are visiting campus and themselves, and really share that knowledge that they've accumulated over the years. And they want to do this in a way that's fun, but also won't take away too much time and distract them from their daily routines. And on the audience end, people that are visiting campus are often discouraged by what's an overwhelming amount of information from a variety of sources, and they don't feel like they're getting kind of a cohesive narrative experience, a story of what it's actually like to go to school at Northwestern and see what a day in the life is really like. And so to that end, one of our major goals here is for participants to be able to easily share a place or location on or off campus that they know really well with prospective students. And one of the main obstacles with that goal is that community members aren't necessarily thinking about, oh, what's a good place to share with a prospective student as they're just going through their daily routine. And so one way that we've identified to solve this obstacle is that we can use a context awareness engine. So basically identifying places that students return to, places that students spend a long time in, and coupling that with knowledge of location context and location awareness, we can try to guess when students are in places that they might want to contribute. So for example, if you're spending a lot of time in main library, we might prompt you to say, say, would you like to contribute this place to a story for prospective students to visit where students like you might study? And so by trying to get an authentic picture of where those students are going on a day-to-day basis, we can prompt them to contribute to this experience without them having to actively think about what they're doing and what they'd like to share. Additionally, another problem is that contributors prefer low commitment but still engaging tasks. They don't want to go well out of their way, but they want to be interested by what they're doing. And so we've solved this by, once they've been prompted into the experience, all they're going to have to do is contribute a photo and possibly a few lines of text, just to make this a very simple process, but something where they can still identify their connection and then eventually be able to see how their contribution was able to help prospective students. Their photos might be combined or compared with the photos of students that are actually visiting the place they suggest. And so it creates this sense of a collective experience to a certain location where there's a return and constant revisiting for students and prospective students.
For the audience, who are often prospective students or newcomers in this case, the desired outcome for them is to enjoy unique hidden gem local experiences or visit hidden gem places like a local. So the obstacle for them is that they often don't have any knowledge or connections on campus to help them to do so, and a good experience would certainly require a narrative arc and rich content. To address this problem, we use a step-based narrative map, which is a step-by-step map generated from diverse user inputs that will allow a newcomer to experience interesting places. As you can see on the screenshot on the right, different inputs, contributions from local community members form a route that prospective students can easily follow when they are on campus, even though they may not know anybody. If you click onto each location, you will see a much more detailed description and reasons why they love this place. Some of them may even tell you their own stories associated with their favorite spot. In this way, you can really have enrich the newcomer's experience by introducing the places to them with stories and like a friend. After we've come up with our design arguments, we move on to further evaluate our ideas through a user study. We designed and conducted a user study that mainly focused on the experience of contributors. The two key questions we had in mind: number one, how much flexibility or which kind of flexibility do users most enjoy with their inputs? There are three models we were thinking of. The first one is give user a general time period and doesn't limit their location. The second one is limit their location to a zone of areas in the radius that they can input. And the third one is fixed location. Question number two, will users be motivated to participate in the CN experience? Factors we were thinking about include disruption to their routine, the detour they need to take, and their willingness to introduce NU campus to new students. The study setup is basically we designed and ran an online cognitive walkthrough through a Google form on 5 participants who have been at NU for more than 3 years. So we would assume that they have extensive knowledge about the campus. Participants were asked to imagine themselves in a hypothetical scenario, and they will look at a series of different screens that will simulate a real CN experience. Then they were asked to answer questions following each screen to learn more about their thought process and their experience. The main measurements we use for this study is qualitative feedback from the users and also ratings and rankings that were asked on different parts of the task. We have 4 findings. Finding 1, most participants show considerable interest in helping prospective students, even without prior experience, as you can see on the chart on the right. Finding 2 is that time and schedule were mentioned a lot in user feedback. For example, someone mentioned that whether they will participate in experience is based on their schedule, and someone else mentioned they will only participate if they're not in a hurry. So we realize that time commitment is definitely a critical concern for participation. Finding 3 is that users prefer the general time period chosen for U-model, closely followed by general area chosen model. So they will indeed like some flexibility with their inputs. Finding 4 is that overall they really enjoyed the experience and didn't think of it as too disruptive to their daily schedule. Our takeaways from the user study is that it validates our assumptions that it can be an engaging experience for contributors who wants to share. They need some but they also need some flexibility with when and where, and they're more reluctant to putting information if they can only have a fixed location. Certainly, we realize that time may be more of a limiting factor than location to user motivation, as many users were willing to take detours to take pictures. However, they were more concerned about time conflicts. The next steps for us would be we want to revise our design arguments based on user study takeaways. We want to build a functional tech prototype, and we want to run more user testings with our high fidelity prototype, not only with the user group of contributors, but also with the audience as well. And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.